Hello, this is Sondra, Oster, Baras, bringing you a few words of Bible from the heart of Biblical Israel. This week's Torah portion is Vayechi, and with it we conclude the book of Genesis. And I'd like to actually go to the very end of this Torah portion, to the very end of the book of Genesis. We know that Jacob dies, and all the brothers carry him for burial to the land of Canaan, to the land of Israel. And we see here something that we have paid attention to before. At the beginning of at the end of chapter 49, we see that Jacob is commanding his children to bury him in the Machpelah cave. But instead of just saying, do me a favor, this is what, it didn't say do me a favor, he said commanded them, bury me in the Machpelah cave, which is located in Hebron. It's the place where, Abraham and Isaac and Leah and Sarah, Rebecca are all buried, okay? But he says something else here, and we see this every time the cave of Machpelah is mentioned since Abraham's purchase of it. It refers to the fact that Abraham purchased it. We see this in verse 30. In the cave, which is in the field of Machpelah, overlooking Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham purchased the field from Ephron the Hittite as a burial tomb. There they buried Abraham and Sarah, his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah, his wife. And there I buried Leah. And then again, he's going to repeat in verse 32, the purchase of the field and the cave from the Hittites. Okay? As if to, over and over again, we are hearing in Jacob's phrase, this is far beyond a commandment that indicates to them geographically where is this tomb located. This is also asserting over and over, I have a legal right to this tomb. I purchased it. Okay? Then, when the Bible tells us what actually happened, that they took him and they buried him, again we have the same repetition in the chapter 50, verse 13. And his sons carried him to the land of Canaan. They buried him in the cave in the field of Machpelah, which Abraham purchased, the field, as a burial estate from Ephron the Hittite, overlooking Mamre. Okay, it's like, we know this already. Why do we have to repeat it? And I believe that this is something that God wants to imprint on our hearts. And that we bought it, we have a right to it. At this point in time, all we have, our connection to the land of Israel at this point, is a promise. Okay, God promised the land to our forefathers. This is before there's a nation of Israel who comes back after Joshua to conquer the land, to become a nation like all other nations. So the question, of course, that kind of floats over the whole book of Genesis is, where do these people belong? This is a family who, beginning with Abraham, left where they were originally from. Okay, and they're called Ivrim. Ivrim has been translated to mean Hebrews, and it's kind of a word that it takes on the meaning of what it becomes, as opposed to what's the origin of the word. Okay, so we know Hebrews, and the language is called Ivrit, which is Hebrew, and it's all very nice. But why was Abraham called an Ivri to begin with? And even Joseph is called an Ivri. What does that mean? So one of the explanations, Ivri or Ever, means the other side. Okay, so there is an understanding that they came from the other side of a river. And here they're not referring to the Jordan, they're referring to the Euphrates, because he came from that Fertile Crescent. He came from Mesopotamia, which is considered the other side of the Euphrates, over there, okay? And he comes into Canaan, where he is a stranger. So throughout this period of time, there's an identity of this family as not being Canaanite. Even when they come to Egypt, they're not coming as Canaanites. They're coming as Hebrews, as these people that came from somewhere else, okay? So then what is their connection to the land of Israel? Where is it that they feel at home? And the only reason they feel at home in the land of Israel is by virtue of God's promise. He told Abraham, come to this land and settle it. And who told Isaac, stay in this land and settle in it and live in it. And who tells Jacob, after he runs away to Haran, and being with his Uncle Laban, leave Laban, go back to the land where you need to be. That is where your estate is. That's where you're supposed to settle. But in terms of all the rest of the world and how everyone sees them, they see them as Hebrews, as outsiders, as wanderers. As what is their connection to the land of Israel? And so here, the Bible is reminding us that it is, in addition to a promise, there was a purchase. There is a legal connection between these people and the land of Israel. And of course, this idea of a legal connection is something that is very important for us to remember. It's as if the Bible and God is telling us there will always be people who will doubt your claim to the land. Even once you conquer it and become a nation and this becomes your land, there will always be people who will doubt your connection. And so we're always going to have to press upon people. We have a right to be here. We have a legal connection. We have a promise. We bought this land. Whatever it is, this is where we belong. And in ancient times, by the way, when you buried somebody, it was very important that you had a family plot. If you were going to buy one thing, you were going to buy that. And that's something you see very much in the interaction between Abram and the Hittites when he first buys the Machpelah cave. Because they're saying, we'll let you bury here, and then you become a guest of the Hittites. And he doesn't want that. He wants his own family burial plot. So actually, that family burial plot in Hebron is the first piece of real estate that anchors the Jewish or the Israelite connection to the land of Israel in a very physical and legal way. And so that is something that, of course, is emphasized here. After the burial, however, there's a question of what happens between Joseph and the brothers. And there's a fear among the brothers that now that the father has died, maybe Joseph was restraining himself. Maybe he was, all's good and kumbaya, so that he wouldn't distress his father Jacob. And so they're concerned now that now that their father is dead, he will take revenge on them for the terrible things they did to him, selling him into slavery. And of course, Joseph is very clear on that. And he says, and this is like an amazing statement of faith on Joseph's part, he says, you need to understand, number one, I'm not God. If you deserve punishment, that's up to God to do, which is a very important statement. But another thing he said is that all this that happened because this is what God wanted. Okay, God brought you to a place here so that I could support you. And he promises them. He says, I'm going to support you now. We have, there's times, the difficult times, and I'm going to be able to help you. And that's, of course, how the end of that interchange, which is very positive. And the very, very end, right before Joseph dies, we learn something else, okay? And Joseph says to his brothers, I'm about to die, but God will remember you. God will take you out of this land to the land that was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then he makes them swear in the same way he promises them, but God will remember them. He's saying that when God does remember you, I want you to also take my bones out of Egypt and bury me in Canaan. And so we see the very, very end of Genesis ends with this expression of connection to the land of Israel. Joseph, as much as he was the one who said, settle here, and very important, settle here and make this your home, and I'll look after you, and you're comfortable in Egypt. At the end of his life, Joseph makes sure to tell his brothers, this is not your land. You will be here for who knows how long, and it will end up being hundreds of years. You will be here a long time, okay? But God will remember you, and he will bring you back to the land. So even as when they buried Jacob in Hebron, we have that constant reminder, this is the land where they belong. This is the burial plot that belongs to the family. Joseph here reminds them, you will then return to that land. And this is how Genesis ends. And of course, as we enter the book of Exodus with the beginning with the slavery in Egypt, there's this constant reminder that we know they will come back to the land, because that is the force of history that God set in motion with that first commandment to Abraham. Go forth from your father's house, from your birthplace, to the land that I will show you. Eventually, we will come back to that land. And today, we have always also come back to that land. Have a wonderful weekend. Shabbat Shalom. I hope you enjoyed that film. And we have lots more film content and emails and articles that I'm sure you will enjoy as well. Check out our website at CFOIC.com and subscribe to our newsletter. You can do that right from the homepage. I know you will really enjoy the content that will land in your inbox on a regular basis. Hope to see you soon.